Hi, everybody.
Anthony, thank you. Because I'm from the 70s. Thank you.
First off, before we start with the questions, Tony and Ronnie, I want to thank you both so much for being here on this special festival that we are hosting here. I really sincerely am grateful that you're so willing to continually share your story with the public. It's so important to reach out in that way and to give us that opportunity to hear from you and to learn from these stories, and it's very generous of you. So thank you for that. And so,
Thank you.
And to help us with the discussion and for the moderation, I would like to invite Mickey Vukovic, Executive Director of the Tony Hawk Foundation, to come on up and help us out. And we're going to get going with the questions in just a second. You'll notice that there's 2 microphones halfway down each aisle. If you'd like to ask a question, would you just please take yourself to one of the microphones and queue up, and we'll get going.
Everybody, please, I know you got questions. Get up, line up, man up, as Lance said. Woman up, if that's your situation. We got microphone here, microphone there.
You guys can sit down.
We need some people to line up and make this a lively discussion. Firstly, Jeff, John, I think I represent a number of people in this room when I say that as a lifelong skateboarder, many of us here have striven to raise the profile of skateboarding and elevate its notoriety throughout the country, throughout the world, and really get guys like Tony and Rodney the respect that they deserve in various ways through media, et cetera. And to see an event like this at a national institution like this, the Lemelson Center, the Smithsonian, we really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for having the insight and the faith in what these guys have created to bring this to the national stage. Thank you.
Not only just opening, but with the open arms with which you do it. You're such good people. We're so honored to be here. Thank you.
I see a lonely microphone over here. Before we start, I see we have someone over here. That's great. Let's everyone else start lining up. I just wanted to say that as someone who's sort of been witness to a lot of what this film covers, I just have the sense and the feeling that with all the accolades and all the awards that Stacy Peralta has received for his filmmaking, not for Anarchy necessarily, but since then, I really truly believe that this is the film he was meant to create. And as someone who saw a lot of these events and saw all of this transpire from the outside, but being within that community, I think that we finally do have a document, a film, something that the rest of the world can see that, in my mind, shares not just your own story, but shares what skateboarding was about and some of the groundwork of what created what we have now. And hopefully, again, it allows people to have a little more insight and understanding of the depth of the community and the culture and what you guys helped create. And with that, I think we have a question over here.
Sure. Hi, guys. Pretty stoked to be here, to say the least. I apologize for what is probably going to sound like a really vague question, but it's kind of a I don't know, personal philosophical thing of mine, where I think the most valuable thing that any of us can possess is perspective. It kind of goes with the whole idea of being able to walk in somebody else's shoes. So given the unique position that you're in and everything that you've been through and the whole story that the film tells, I'm just curious to know both of you, what would be a piece of perspective that you have through everything you've lived through and done and seen and experienced that you find to be really valuable to yourselves?
I can answer that quickly, saying that my first skateboard is going to live here at the Smithsonian as of tomorrow. And if you had told me that almost at any time in my life, I wouldn't have believed it. Even in the heyday of the 80s of what this documents, that didn't seem like a possibility. We were not on that radar. We were not of that success level or considered that legitimate in the eyes of the mainstream sports or media. So for me, that's a huge perspective. It's still unbelievable to me, but I'm truly honored to be able to donate it. I mean, the backstory on that is that my brother gave it to me when I was 9 years old. It was my first board, and so when prompted to donate something here for this event, I said I'd love to give that, but I had to give his blessing. This is my brother Steve right there. I'm still trying to convince him. To let it go here. So we're still in the negotiating process. But yeah, I know. But I called him and I said, "What do you think about me giving this away?" And he said, "I've always thought it belonged there." So with that, he booked a ticket. I booked a ticket, and here we are. So thanks.
Jeff called me when you gave him the okay that you're going to send him that board, and he was so excited. He's like, to inspire you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have anything that could ever match that. I haven't even seen it. I can't wait.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I expected to deliver it here, but Mickey FedExed it on Monday. I've never been so concerned about a FedEx package in my life.
To your question, context and reference points. As you see, and this connects to what Mickey was saying about the film, that it shows not just what we did or what the times were like, but what inspired and drove us at that time. And all of us are seeking, all of us feeling outcast, seeking to find community, but on our own terms, because that's who we are. In the skateboarding, it was just me being on the farm, or everyone has their setting, but we're all trying the same things, to express ourselves through what we do. And that in itself speaks for who we are. And as that speaks and we individuate ourselves in a way that's recognizable, the community embraces us more, and suddenly we find more sense of belonging. And so what we're doing context-wise, we're just doing what we're doing, expressing ourselves, not thinking about the future, not thinking about the community, not thinking about anything. We're just thinking about, what can we do with this thing, and how good it feels, and how good it feels when our friends see it and they embrace us. And as the years roll on, and this is what has been the greatest reward, because skateboarding has given me everything, more than I could ever dream. People keep thanking me, and I just like, I'm thanking you. Because it rolls out into the present, and not only the thanks that we get, but for what the tricks that they're doing, we see what we did matters to the community. And now being embraced by the Smithsonian here, talk about context and belonging. That's what this perspective has given us. It unfolds and becomes richer all the time.
By the way, what Lance was talking about in the movie about being kind of out of place, sitting here between these two guys, for me, I think I'm starting to get some perspective on what Lance was talking about.
Let me tell you guys who Mickey is, by the way. Mickey and I were in high school together. We went to 9th grade at San Diego, also known as San Diego, for good reason. And we were the only skaters in our high school, and constantly ridiculed and threatened and had our boards taken away, and got so discouraged with that school and with the attitude towards skating that he went to military school the next year by his own choice. And for real, Army Navy Academy.
Everything's relative.
Yeah, and then I went and asked to be transferred to Torrey Pines, which was the opposite end of the spectrum, but still got made fun of for being a skater. It was just more rich, spoiled kids there. But through and through, Mickey has always skated, loved skating, worked for Trans World 411, and as our foundation got more established, there was no one better qualified to do the job of getting information, getting resources, and getting funding as Mickey. So he is the director of our foundation for good reason, but I want everyone to know the backstory that he has been skating as long as I have.
Thank you. That was very generous. And by the way, Matt Hensley went to Army Navy as well. So
He didn't go to
if
San
that, if that
Diego,
rings a
though.
bell. No, didn't go to San Diego. Over here, question.
First of all, you guys are in the Smithsonian. Congratulations, it's amazing. I guess my question has to do with perspective, but it's my life. I'm a 40-year-old man. It's paralleled. I've watched you guys. I make my living as a sales rep in the skateboard industry. I've worked for your contemporaries, Pierre, Andre, et cetera, and I'm blown away that the professor's here, that Brian Tucci, who I grew up watching, who's an amazing skateboarder, is here. Just, you know, that everything to me that is skateboarding, and especially the two of you, we have created as skateboarders and supported and built. And, you know, in 1986, you chose to wear a Nike shoe because you made that skateboarding. It didn't make skateboarding. And now skateboarding is invaded by the larger corporations, the Nikes, the Adidases, these companies that come in and compete with what skateboarders have created and are responsible for, and it is eroding what we do. And I've seen a death. What I'm seeing, at least from a business perspective, is we've gone through multiple deaths in skateboarding, and nothing like what you guys experienced in the early 90s, but right now skateboarding is at a lull. And it's what I see is the kids aren't supporting what skateboarding has created. And I'm just curious what your perspective is on that, and all of the contemporaries around you, and how their businesses are really being eaten at by the Vanity Fairs and the Nikes and the Adidases, the things that we didn't create or choose to have participate in our creation.
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword in terms of the success and the big companies that get involved, because they do support skateboarding in other ways as well, with doing sponsorships, with doing big events with bigger prize money, and, to be honest, allowing people who have devoted their lives to it to actually make a living at it, to actually make a good living at it, and to have much more opportunity because they have injected their funding and interest into it, and advertising dollars, of course. But I think that skateboarding has gone the way of many businesses now in terms of consolidation and overseas production, and so it's all relative to the commerce of this era. But I disagree in that somehow that's eroding the heart of skateboarding, because I feel like the heart of skateboarding is alive and well. There are plenty of people that still are only about core skateboarding, or only about the gnarly stuff. And as you can tell, skating continues to progress. It continues to evolve. It continues to thrive, no matter what other entities are getting involved in it. I've seen it from such a perspective of rising and falling 3 times, really, in popularity, and how the skating itself continues to evolve through that. Skyrockets, the techniques and now the facilities. I mean, now, kids doing 1080s on mega ramps. That's just unbelievable stuff that's happening out there because of these big advertising dollars. I mean, it's not because of them, but that definitely helps the process. So it's it's definitely a fine line to walk, but there is a faction out there of skaters that just support the skate companies, support the skater-owned companies, and also are progressing skating, but more the underground sort of rebellious roots of skating is still alive and well. I can tell you just from my own son Riley and the crew he hangs out with.
Rodney, you helped found a really core company that redefined the skateboard industry, and it got really popular, and then you sold out to a huge conglomerate. Please comment.
Rodney started it. It's all his fault.
Answer the man's question.
Okay, here's what I think. I think Tony's precisely right, and it's double-edged. But I think that there's something in terms of the culture, and this draws us back to tomorrow's event and being here, that we're drawn to what we see in general. I started skating because the guy down the street was aloof and cool, because he skated, and I just thought, that's what I want to be. And it's the lens through which we see. Now skaters, they're seen on TV between motorcycle racing and stuff on Fuel, right? Or Street League.
Fuel's gone, but it's okay, Rodney. We know you don't watch TV,
Oh, is
so
it?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
okay.
okay. What is it? Anyway.
It's gone.
Right? Whatever they're seen on, they're sandwiched in between more regular metric sports. And to some extent, I think it's good because it attracts people. They see what skating is, and they'll get it once they're in. And if they don't like it after a while, they'll figure that out, and they'll bail. The other side is that the more that's advertised, the more people are drawn to that and want to be like what they see. And I see it with stunt skating or whatever. You see all these big, great things that look awesome in magazines, and you're around the dudes that really skate, and they don't do that every day. They just like to have fun, and they gear up for what's going to be the big photo. And so it gives a transmogrified perspective of what we really do and what we're really about. And the culture itself has always been about, again, this outside community, about doing your own thing, representing yourself by what you do, and not by trying to outdo the other specifically in terms of yards or whatever, feet, inches. And so one of the dangers that I see is it will become more like that, and there are parts of that, and indeed are that, corporate or not. It's just how it's seen. The other side is the parts, such as the Smithsonian embracing us tomorrow for Innoskate, that say, hey, what you do is special and innovative, and it's conducive. Your culture itself is conducive to things new, different. And let's try to amplify that part of it. Let's be seen in this context. And that sends such a good message, a message that's resonant with the true heart of what skateboarding is. And so that's, again, where I want to thank the Smithsonian.
I think also to your point, there is always the fear that the core, the heart of skateboarding is threatened with growth, with change. I think in the 30 years or more that I've been involved, I've seen skateboarding evolve to the point where basically every form of skateboarding that ever existed exists again. And each form of it is thriving, whether you're talking about pool skating, ramp skating, street skating, slalom, old school freestyle. They all have their niche, they all have their events, they all have their community, their websites, whatever. And so that's all thriving. And whatever aberrations you see, whatever big media events you see, those are just extra. They're satellites around the planet. I don't think they threaten the heart and the soul of it. And I think in terms of the companies, the Nikes and the Red Bulls and whatnot that are coming into skateboarding, as Tony said, they're providing important resources that a lot of these skaters who ride for them, their board companies can't afford to do. So they can represent their core board company and make their living with a soft drink or a shoe company. But I think another important thing is in Tony and my work with the Tony Hawk Foundation over the last decade or more, we've seen, going into communities and trying to work with the skaters and have them go to their local leaders and make the case for why a skate park is important, a safe place for the growing number of skaters to go and ride. It seemed silly to have to go in there and make the case, but that was the situation 10 years ago. You had to convince people that, kids are not playing baseball anymore. They're skateboarding, and stop building baseball fields and start building skate parks. In the last 4 or 5 years, that whole conversation has changed. There are city council members and mayors who, if they're not skaters themselves, they have kids who skate. They get it. So we walk in, and the conversation isn't, here's why you need a skate park. It's them asking us, okay, we know we need it. How do we do it? Where do we find the money? How do we design it? Et cetera, et cetera. We've evolved beyond the question about whether or not it's valid or relevant or necessary. And I think with a lot of the large companies, you have the same thing. You have now skateboarders in those companies, in middle and upper management. Maybe they don't own those large corporations, but they're in influential positions. And so these companies that came into skateboarding have absorbed skateboarders and are becoming part of skateboarding in that way. And I think that skateboarding's influence is now affecting even those large corporations. So I think that it's a matter of perspective to some degree. And it's not so much an invasion as maybe it used to be in the 90s when they first started coming in. You know, now we've infiltrated, so to say. And so I think that there's more interesting things coming about as a result of that.
First, it's like an honor and a privilege to address you. Rodney, you returned and went back to the drawing board with adapting your style into the street, and skateboarding will forever, thank you for that. And I know it took probably a lot of courage and a lot of work. And Tony, you put pretty much your life financially on the line to start your company. And that was a big, a big risk that you put in with your heart. And I think if people like you guys are still in the game, that I don't think skateboarding can die all the way. But my question was, did you guys skate today? Sorry.
Betsy has my board. I skated here, and I'm headed out to skate from the White House afterwards.
Let's just say I got from point A to point B while I was here, but I sprained my knee a couple weeks ago, so I'm kind of laying low. But I am able to get from one place to the other without actually leaving the ground yet.
Thanks, guys.
Transportation, just one more of skateboarding's many facets.
Hi. I just think it's super rad how you guys are not only, the icons of skateboarding, but also very successful entrepreneurs. And I was wondering, when you guys were first starting your businesses, if there was inspirations outside of the skateboard industry that motivated you or kind of gave you guys inspiration, or even to this day with your businesses, if there's stuff outside of skating.
I didn't have too many examples outside of skating because I was relatively young when I started my business. I was 24, so which seemed like super old in skate years. So I felt like I had to go do something and be responsible. My best example was Stacy. Stacy did it, and I wanted to go do it.
A lot. What we did, it's rotten, but it shows the little guy inside me that really drives me, is the things that inspired me are all the things I didn't want to be. They were very corporate and structured at the time. And it's not a dismissal, but clearly you can see what happened toward the end with Powell, that Stacy tried to fight or militate against. And again, my partner had come from Vision, which was not great. And so we, in a sense, reacted in an extreme way, and it became Lord of the Flies. But it did last, and it created something that allowed for the future of young skaters, so they could, when they started to get banged up, or just the fear that they were going to get banged up, they would have a home where they could start a company. And that was in our hearts, just what Stacy said. So that Stacy was a motivation for us, what we wanted to do. But a lot of the environment were bigger motivations that we didn't want to do in terms of happen to us or our friends.
Rodney, would it be correct to say that when you and Steve Rocco started World Industries, your strategy was to hire the right people and give them the freedom to do what the ultimate end goal was?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It was about freedom and autonomy. Express yourself, do your thing. And that's what we created, and it lasted.
Yes, I grew up skateboarding in the 90s and 2000s here in DC, and I was able to see how skateboarding went from being something that was completely unacceptable to something that is now so acceptable that it's everywhere, and you see it advertising, orange juice commercials. And it's thanks in large part to a lot of things that you did, Tony, especially in the late 90s and 2000s. It's even gone outside of the U.S. Having been able to travel, I've gone to countries where skateboarding's been completely outlawed, and they still know who you are. Now, my question is, where do you see skateboarding's place in American society and the global society in sports, but also throughout the culture? How does it play a role? Because even though skateboarding is still accepted, you still obviously have a lot of problems, especially in the U.S. when it comes to street skating, or even the people like to take advantage of skateboarding's cool image, but then oftentimes give skateboarders little respect when it comes to anything that's outside of the actual activity of skateboarding.
Well, I think that image is changing. That attitude towards skating has largely changed over the last 10, 15 years, and is still changing for the better. But if you're asking what skateboarding's place in American history or society is, I feel like we're at a point where it's no longer a novelty or at risk of dying, so to speak, or a fad. The proliferation of just skate parks alone is huge, and cities are spending that money not considering a temporary investment. And more kids choose to skate than play Little League. If Little League's our American pastime, then here we are. That kind of sums it up right there. That skateboarding is as popular as baseball among youth, if not more popular. We'll likely see it in the Olympics. I have mixed feelings about that, but we're here to stay. That's how I feel about it, and I feel like that is starting to spread. That idea and that popularity is starting to spread globally as well. Thank you.
I think you have a very layered question and statement.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I just wanted to test the first layer of it.
It's hard. With filming at schools and stuff, it was way easier just some years ago. With greater popularity and greater exposure, you get more tickets now than ever. It's hard. Human nature is what it is. You treat someone badly or like a criminal, then they act accordingly. And there is that dynamic, and it's just turbulence. It makes things cloudy sometimes. In one sense, I can look at the earlier eras, and if you've seen Dogtown, and a lot of the older dudes, they you don't want to be them, in terms of where they've gone. Skateboarding is now drawing in more kids that see it as just wholesome, and they're wholesome kids to begin with, and they're treated better, and they act accordingly, and it's cleaner. But then the harassment sometimes, I do call it harassment. Sometimes, skaters got it coming. I get that. So it's layered and it's hard. But with the greater popularity of it, there are more tickets in some sense. It's much harder to do things. It's frustrating. It's hard.
I mentioned earlier the difference in perspective from politicians, local politicians, how they're much more accepting these days of skate parks and skateboarding in their communities. That's not always the case. Once in a while, you find a community or a particular politician or mayor who's just dead set against it. They have their idea of what they did in 1950 as a kid, and that's what kids want to do today, and that's what they want to do in their cities. And it really frustrates the local parents and the local skate park advocates and the skaters, obviously. And I just tell them, the skate park that you want to build, bringing skateboarding into your community in a real formal way, it's inevitable. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And the one thing you have going for you is your passion and your commitment to it. And one thing they have against them are term limits. So it's just a matter of time. It's a matter of time, I think.
First of all, I just want to say thanks for what you've given me and people here and so many others. And my question, I think, was a little bit too similar to the last question, so I'll maybe take it a little bit different direction. Last time I saw you guys up this close was 1986 at the Sunshine House in Bethesda, Maryland. And and as a lot of people have alluded to, it was kind of bad news to be a skateboarder back then. And I remember when I first wanted to skateboard, my orthopedist granddad went nuts. You know, he was completely against it, and the famous Santa Cruz bumper sticker, "Skateboarding is not a crime," that was, you know, a big deal. And I guess if you guys could comment a little bit more on what it was like to have that be such a theme, and then when you knew maybe that that was no longer such a factor, and when the acceptance kind of became obvious.
Well, I think it's different levels of acceptance. You know, definitely in the 80s, we did not get the level of acceptance we have now. Obviously, it was still considered this sort of outcast sport, even though it was popular. It was more of an underground alternative movement. I don't know what the tipping point has been in recent years, but for me, it was around 1999, 2000, when our first video game was released, and things went crazy, and I started getting invited to do talk shows and encouraged to go skate places that I would absolutely get arrested for in the past. So for me, it was around those years for sure when I started getting to do stuff that was just like beyond anything I could ever imagine. Being on The Simpsons, stuff like that.
Well, I will say, me and all my buddies went to go see Police Academy just because y'all were in it.
Thank you.
A friend of mine knows Matt Groening. I got to have dinner with him from The Simpsons, and he was so. One of the things he talked about was like Tony Hawk. He was the coolest guy. He was so honored that you were there.
That was so fun. That was one of the funnest things ever.
Never mind.
Mickey, let me interject just real quick. We're nearing the point of the conclusion of the program. We're going to take a few more questions. I say that with great sensitivity, because anytime that we close this session, it's going to be too short, and I realize that. I'm just telling you, we're going to go for a few more minutes, and then we're going to have to close it out. So.
Jeff, we just ordered all the beer and pizza.
Never mind.
Hi, it's a real privilege to be here addressing you two, and you, Mickey. I just didn't know you. I didn't know who
you can call me Lance.
Today. Really. It struck, you know, we're here at the Lemelson Center for the Study of Invention and Innovation, and what's really struck me watching that movie was the incredible inventiveness and constant innovation of the way you kind of took this tool, in a way, and used it to create something new all the time. And Rodney, you said something in the movie. I'm looking at my Facebook post so I can remember it and quote it appropriately. You said, "Belief is at the heart of everything," and then a little bit later you said, "Joy is what comes out of you." And what struck me is that, but I'm asking, I guess, your opinions on this. What is it that created that joy of inventiveness for each of you?
Yeah.
Either of you?
Yeah.
Nothing? Just because it was fun?
Yeah, it's like anything. The more you do something and the better you're able to do it. You go, okay, I can do that. And you start to add them together. And that becomes a connecting the dots, a clear representation of this is who I am. And as that unfolds, it's twofold. And it is synergistic, and one is pushing the other. Like a motor, you know, it truly is. It's always that as you express yourself, you feel greater joy. Of like, I'm empowered to do that. Look at what I did, and no one else did that. And that creates something. And then you have more pieces to work with. And in itself, that it feeds you. And recognizing that, that's a joy of accomplishment. Of, wow, I did that. And then you push further and higher. Better articulating who you are, and also, in a sense, a kind of pride of, look at what I have. and look at what we have. In that sense, it's open source. And so when you do something and it becomes part of your identity, I think what fuels innovation is when it's so incorporated, ingrained into who you are. It doesn't take great minds necessarily. It's someone who feels it so much. It's all they think about. It's always part of them, and things just naturally flow. They don't know they're inventing. They're just being, you know? So that's at the heart of what I said.
Yeah, what he said.
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, to be honest, I can't, there's no way I'm going to speak it more eloquently than Rodney, but for me, the absolute joy of, for me, the absolute joy of skating was doing something that I've never done before, whether it be no one's done it before or someone else has created it and I didn't know if I was capable of it, but I wanted to see if I could do it. That's the buzz, that's the high, and even to this day, I mean, you know, I want to go out and learn new stuff. Like, I just learned Good Buddies the other day, which is a totally old 80s trick, but I never tried it, and Kevin Staub was trying it, so he and I learned it together in our 40s. So, and it was hyped, you know. But that was it. That's the buzz. It's the buzz you keep chasing, and to master things like that is amazing. That you love it so much that you're willing to repeatedly do it until it's almost boring, but suddenly you realize you have it mastered, and that's amazing to know that you have that in your arsenal. You can just go out and do it wherever, it's, you know, with all that practice that just seems routine, it's not. It really is moving towards something greater.
Hi, Tony, Rodney, Mickey. My question is for Tony and Rodney, two parts. Back in the day when we were all skateboarding, Tony, what was your favorite skate park to skate at besides your home park? Did you have a favorite and why?
My favorite, just in terms of terrain, was Big O, because it had a little bit of everything, and it had that channel that was so, you know, well, it wasn't that huge. That's what I loved about it, is that it was accessible to me as an amateur. I could actually jump over this channel, and every other channel, channel when we talk about it is are like gaps in the bowl. You could the opening in the bowl that you could jump over. Well, the bigger ones seemed unattainable to me, but Big O had one that I could do, and and it also had different terrain, so I loved it a lot. But I love the vibe at Whittier the most, because Whittier had the coolest crew: Lance, John Lucero, Jeff Grosso, Lester. That place was full of super creative energy. So we used to go up there as much as we could. Actually, we went there the last day it was open.
It was one of the few skate parks at that time where just about everything in the park was actually built well, and all the pools had tile and coping, which was very premium at the time, and you could skate everything in the park and enjoy it instead of this park with 10 runs has 2 good things, which was typical back then.
And the second part of the question is for Rodney. I know that you used to skate at Hermosa Pier with Steve Rocco, and I remember you watching you learning trick after trick. Was that one of your favorite places when you were in California to practice, or were there other places that you were going as well that you really enjoyed where you could get creative?
Thank you. And that last little bit you tacked on, it changes the complexion a little. That was fun because it's beautiful pier, awesome. Everything you think of California, it is that there. Oh, it's where we had lunch, And, but the place for me that's most creative usually, it's like you get comfortable in places that make you uncomfortable, and that's conducive to doing something new. And so it's always that place just on the other side of the freeway that's a little dark and dank, and that's where I go, and I love that because you feel like this little mission type of thing. And that's where new things always come, and that's what makes it my favorite always.
Can I tell a story about Westwood? Stacy was 6 to Westwood.
Oh my gosh. Zach.
Whenever we'd be staying at Stacy's, I know it's all on there, but whenever we would go to an event and stay at Stacy's house, the night before a contest, he would take us out to eat pasta. That was his big thing. Like, we're going to go get you guys energy, carbohydrates, pasta. All right. But he would always take us to Westwood in LA, and Westwood was like I don't know how to explain it. It was sort of the touristy hot spot. Touristy? Just, the nightlife, buzzing, street performers. It's crowded as hell. And we went there. He parked pretty far, so we skated to this Italian restaurant in Westwood. And then on the way back, Rodney starts skating on a corner, just skating, doing all of his crazy stuff that he does so well. And people started crowding around, thinking he was a street performer. And they started throwing money I'm not even kidding. They started throwing money at him. And this other street performer came from up the block, like a block away, stopped what he was doing, came over and started chewing Rodney out. Like, you don't come on my block and without prior permission and start doing this stuff and taking my crowd away and yelling at him. And he made him stop.
Damn you for skating well.
And he got like $50, right?
When there was first time I was in New York, I was straight off the farm, such an idiot, I was like 16, and I go out at night skating, it's the same deal, just rolling around, and people are gathering in New York, and I don't know, it felt good. And breakdancers down the street, they came around me, and this one guy took off his hat, and he was like, "Yo, give it up for the man," and he starts cruising around collecting all this money, and then he just walked off.
Time for more?
Okay, I'm going to be really sorry. I'm going to put a lot of pressure on you. I'm going to ask you to ask the final question for this evening, and my apologies to those.
Make it a good one. This is the banger, end of the video.
Pretty please.
See the hammer.
You guys are saying Joey, that's actually my name.
It's a great name. It's a great name.
Rap battle?
All right, I'm going to be honest, I was kind of nervous to get up in front of a bunch of skateboarders and admit that I'm a rollerblader, personally. But, okay, I expected that. All right? I expected it. But I will say I have nothing but love and appreciation for what all of you guys do, what you guys do. Most of my best friends are skateboarders. I mean, I grew up playing Tony Hawk, pro skater, and watching skateboarding videos. I tried to be a skateboarder. I suck. I just happen to be good at rollerblading, But I've seen what from that video and, just from skateboarding in general, what you guys went through when you guys were ridiculed and you were looked at like I am when I go to a skate park full of skateboarders. Because I've actually been booed out of skate parks and not let into skate parks. I have. I just want to know, and I have pro skater friends that make like $1,000 a year skating, but they're like the best skaters in the world. They have no health insurance. They risk their lives every day. And it's a beautiful sport, just no one sees it because it hasn't been on TV for 13 years. And I just want to know what your advice is to people like me that dreamed of, becoming a pro skater and living my life that way, being paid for it. And what you think it would take for rollerblading to get back into the limelight and, appreciated by people that think it's a joke, pretty much, because it's a big problem with us. It's so underground. It sucks.
Well, it was popular.
Yeah,
for sure. And to be honest, I thank rollerblading because I was a special guest at rollerblade demos in the early 90s, and that paid my rent, like for 3 or 4 years. For real, I was like the one special guest skateboarder at these big rollerblade events, and I was hyped. I got to go skate vert and get $100. But I don't really have the answer to that. I think that if you really love doing it, you just got to keep doing it and not listen to the haters. We're the living examples of that. If we were listening to people, if we were listening to people that told us we suck or that we were doing something useless, then we would have quit a long time ago. So you gotta stay true, and you gotta keep doing what you love. And at some point, if you get any amount of success, you don't even think about it because you still are getting to do what you love for a living. We do this now. We do something that we do something that we get paid ridiculous amounts of money to do that we would do for free anyway. And that's how you have to view it. It's because no matter what, you're still going to keep doing what you love doing for a living. So just if you love it, keep at it. Who cares? People are dicks.
I appreciate that, man.
Okay, we're going to take this last question
go
right
ahead.
here. Last one.
Thanks, everybody.
He paid me $20.
Skateboarding is my heart and soul, but I do get down a little bit of street hockey every now and then, so we're cool. 2 questions regarding the evolution of skateboarding. I ride for a charity group called the DC Wheels with a lot of great men and women. A lot of great men and women in this room right now. Part of the team founded by Jimmy Pelletier, and I experience... No one on this planet has shown me more than Jimmy Pelletier that skateboarding truly saves lives, and I wanted to ask you guys if you ever thought it would get to that point where just so many people on this planet, their lives are being saved because of a skateboard. It's amazing. And my second question, which isn't as deep, but Rodney, when you did your first kickflip, when you saw that grip tape come back around for the first time, did you think someone was going to be doing that into a backsmith down a 20-stair handrail?
Never. And the first kickflip was an accident, by the way, too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but the first question seemed more of a statement, but say that again. About all the people...
Did you think it would get to the level... Did you think so many people's lives would be changed, like, in such a positive way from skateboarding?
I have mixed feelings about that, because when people ask me, did you ever think it could be this big or this popular? And in my heart, when I was growing up, I could never figure out why people didn't like it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I was doing it to be rebellious. I didn't really mind that it set me apart. I mean, I liked that it made you individualistic and it gave you your own direction. But at the same time, I was like, why do you think this is lame? This is amazing. This is creative. This is artistic. It's athletic. It's challenging. And so when it got big, I was like, yeah, finally, they figured it out. You know what I mean? And it definitely, it saved me from myself, because I was always so frustrated with how I could perform doing traditional sports. I just didn't. I wanted to do things, but I wasn't physically capable of them, and I was able to figure that out in skateboarding, how to maneuver, how to really work around what was considered hardcore skating. I learned how to ollie into my airs because I didn't have the bulk or the speed to reach down and grab my board and muscle it up, and it was lame at the time. Ollieing into your airs, I was like, they said I was cheating. Yeah, that way you can grab it any way you want. But in that, just in terms of how much it means to people and how they say it did save their life, it saved mine at an early age. I had no identity in the mainstream sport, in the mainstream world of kids and my age, and so it did for sure. And when it finally came to be that it was recognized on a bigger scale, it allowed that many more kids to find themselves. And I'm proud that we had something to do with that.
Thank you. It definitely changed my life.
I was just going to add quickly to that note, is that's the community itself is so rich. Let me say it from just the perspective of experience, that through the years having companies, you go on tour every summer with guys, a lot of guys that you have very little in common with in general, guys from different walks of life, for sure. Guys that I would be afraid of normally. And you're in a van together, you travel, and you have this mutual respect. And the bonds that we create, there's a mutual recognition of what this thing, as different as we are, saving lives is a very strong statement, but giving us enough meaning or a sense of meaning where we feel a sense of how valuable our lives are. And there's a thickness, this sort of a blood that runs through it. It's kind of an amalgam. It binds us together in a way that I think that a lot of sports don't normally get, or call it a sport, call it an art, whatever it is. It is also that we have such a treasure of a community, and it comes from that very, what you're talking about, the essence of that.
I also want to say the first video part I ever saw was your Ender in Opinion, and I immediately went outside and started learning primos and truck stands, handstands before I could even ollie, so thank you for that.
There'll be a lot more discussion about it tomorrow, but to really see how far skateboarding has come and how deeply it's penetrated into the lives of youth around the world, I urge you to Google Uganda Skateboard Union and Skatistan. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry to do it, but we're going to call a temporary halt to the conversation. And I do mean that temporarily because we're going to begin it again tomorrow morning. This has been an incredible launch, the Innoskate event, and tomorrow at 10:30, we're going to go right out in front of the museum on the National Mall with the skate ramp, and we're going to accept the donations of the skate community into the National Museum of American History. Please join us at that time. For the rest of the day, we will begin and continue these conversations. We're going to have sessions and discussions looking at the role of invention and innovation in skateboarding, and intermixed with that, we're going to have demonstrations and skate sessions. So please come out and join us. Thank you for being part of this evening's event. This was an incredible launch, and once again, let us all thank Mickey, Tony, and Rodney for making it such a special conversation.